In the heart of Puebla, where the cobblestone streets glisten after the summer rain and the smell of roasted corn drifts through open windows, Dona Carmen lived a quiet life of pride and perseverance. Her home was modest, but filled with warmth. The kind of warmth that came not from wealth or grandeur, but from love. She had raised her only son, Luis, with her own hands. Her husband had passed when Luis was still a toddler, taken by a sudden illness that left Carmen with no time to mourn. She had no choice but to survive. Luis became her world. Every morning before school, he would help her open the tiny shop they started in their front room. It had once sold only tortillas and beans, but over the years, it grew into a proper family tienda. Locals came not only for goods, but for Carmen's smile, her stories, and the sense of belonging she offered to everyone who stepped through the door. When Luis grew older, he brought fresh energy to the business. He learned about supply chains, negotiated better prices, and turned their humble shop into a thriving wholesale store that served neighboring towns. Carmen watched him with quiet pride, always remembering the little boy who had clung to her apron while she stocked shelves. Then came Isabella. She was elegant, educated, with long dark hair and a smile that rarely reached her eyes. She and Luis had met during a local business conference in Oaxaca. Luis fell quickly, head over heels, and within a year, they married. Carmen had her doubts, but she kept them to herself. Her son was happy, and that was enough. Isabella moved into the family home, and for a time, everything was peaceful. Carmen showed her the ways of the shop, taught her how to talk to customers, how to understand the rhythm of their little empire. Isabella learned fast, too fast. She brought in new systems, modernized the business, and began making decisions without consulting Carmen. Still, Carmen said nothing. She told herself it was for the best, that the world was changing, and maybe it was time she stepped back. Then came the accident. A truck on the highway. A rainy night. A phone call at 2 a.m. that shattered everything. Luis was gone. Carmen didn't cry at first. She simply sat in her room, staring at the candle she lit for his soul, watching the wax melt, hour after hour. The days blurred. Mourners came and went. The shop was closed. Puebla felt colder. After the funeral, Carmen stood alone in Luis's office, staring at his photo. He had been her life, her reason, her strength. And then Isabella walked in. Her heels clicked on the tiled floor, her posture rigid, her face unreadable. She stood across from Carmen and said calmly, "Thank you for everything you've done, Dona Carmen. But from now on, I'll be handling the business alone." There was no emotion in her voice, no gratitude, no respect. Carmen blinked. "Are you firing me?" Isabella didn't answer. She just turned and walked out of the room. The days after that conversation passed like ghosts through the halls of Carmen's home. Every morning, she still rose at dawn, as she had done for decades. Her hands would automatically reach for the apron that no longer held meaning. She would stand by the window, watching Isabella enter the shop below with her sharp heels and colder stare. Carmen wasn't just removed. She was erased. The neighbors noticed her absence. Some came to knock on her door with gentle eyes and soft words. Carmen only smiled, pretending everything was fine. But inside, the silence screamed. Luis's room was left untouched. His coffee mug still sat on the shelf by the sink. No one dared move it. Late at night, Carmen began hearing things. Not voices, but echoes. The tick of the clock, the creak of the wooden beams, the hum of the ceiling fan. All reminders of a life that no longer made sense. She tried to help at the shop once. She walked in, picked up the clipboard like she used to. Isabella looked at her as if she were a stranger. "Please don't interfere, Dona Carmen," she said plainly, without looking up. Carmen felt the sting not just in her heart, but in her bones. As if that wasn't enough, Carmen later noticed changes in the shop itself. The warm, handwritten signs she once made were gone. The local candies the children loved had been replaced with plastic-wrapped imports. The small credit tabs for old friends vanished. It wasn't just her shop anymore. It wasn't even Luis's shop. It was Isabella's world now. Cold, orderly, soulless. One afternoon, Carmen sat under the jacaranda tree in her tiny courtyard. Purple petals drifted to the ground like soft tears. She whispered, "What are you doing to everything we built, Luis?" But the wind said nothing back. Carmen had always kept the old ledgers. Not digital spreadsheets. Not computer systems. Just thick notebooks filled with ink, receipts, and familiar handwriting. They were stacked neatly in a wooden cabinet in the back room, the very room where she had first started selling vegetables over 2 decades ago. That afternoon, she decided to go through them. She didn't know why. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was the need to feel useful again. Maybe she was simply searching for a trace of Luis. The smell of old paper and dust filled the room. She opened the books slowly, one by one, brushing her fingers across the pages. Luis's handwriting was everywhere. His loops, his arrows, his side notes like, "Ask Dona Teresa about her son's wedding, and don't forget to restock the chili oil." But then, something felt wrong. She noticed a gap in the dates. Recent transactions didn't line up. Sales from before Luis's death inflated. Some entries had been erased, others overwritten. At first, she thought she was mistaken. But Carmen knew her books like a mother knows her child. She flipped forward and found new entries, written in Isabella's hand. Different ink, different code. And then, she found a payment, large, unusual, and listed only as consultant fee. Carmen narrowed her eyes. Who had Isabella paid? And for what? The ledger suddenly felt heavier in her hands. She heard footsteps. Quickly, she closed the book and slipped it back into the cabinet. The door creaked open behind her. Isabella stood there, arms crossed. "I told you not to interfere," she said flatly. "I was just cleaning," Carmen replied, her voice even. Isabella didn't blink. She walked over, reached behind Carmen, and locked the cabinet with a tiny brass key. "You don't need to be here, Dona Carmen. You've had your time." Then she left. But Carmen's heart was pounding. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and she was going to find out what it was. It started with the name, Arturo. A local fruit vendor at the market let it slip during a conversation over tamales. Carmen had gone there for fresh herbs, trying to keep herself busy, to feel normal again. But when she asked about changes at the shop, the vendor's face shifted. "Isabella's paying Arturo now," he said without looking up. "Arturo? Which Arturo?" Carmen asked. "The one from Zacatlan. The one who handles arrangements." He said it as if it meant something. But he wouldn't explain. That night, Carmen couldn't sleep. The name echoed in her mind. She remembered Luis once mentioning an Arturo from Zacatlan. But not in business. In warning. He had said quietly that Arturo worked with people who fix problems that involved land, documents, and ownership. Could Isabella have used him? The next morning, Carmen dressed carefully and boarded the early bus to Zacatlan. She hadn't traveled in months, not since Luis died. The road was long, winding through hills and fog. The town was smaller than she remembered, but still alive with color and chaos. She asked discreetly, shop by shop, corner by corner, until someone finally gave her a direction. A small white office, tucked between a bakery and a pawn shop. No sign on the door. Inside, a man with graying hair looked up from his desk. "Carmen Torres," he said, as if he'd been expecting her. Her blood turned cold. "You know who I am?" He smiled faintly. "Of course. Your daughter-in-law hired me." The room felt like it shrank. Carmen steadied herself on the edge of the desk. "What for?" But he only offered a single word. "Transfer." Carmen's world shifted. She had to get back to Puebla. Fast. Back in Puebla, Carmen rushed to Luis's old room. Her fingers trembled as she pulled open drawers, boxes, notebooks. She wasn't sure what she was looking for. Just anything, to prove what Luis knew. Or feared. Hours passed. And then, taped behind a family photo in his nightstand drawer, she found it. A letter. Sealed. Her name was written on the front. She sat on the edge of the bed, tears threatening to fall before she even opened it. "Madre," it began, "if you are reading this, Then something has happened. Luis had known. Maybe not what exactly, but enough. He wrote about suspicions. About Isabella's growing interest and control. About documents she asked him to sign. About Arturo. And how he had refused. I wanted to protect you, but I don't know how far she'll go, he wrote. Carmen gripped the letter tightly. Luis's words felt like whispers from beyond the grave. She had to act. She couldn't let his name, or everything they built, be buried. But first she needed help. And she knew exactly where to go. She folded the letter and slipped it into her coat pocket. Outside, the jacaranda tree rustled in the wind, as if in agreement. Luis had left her a weapon. Now she would use it. Carmen took the letter to the one person she still trusted, Father Mateo, the aging parish priest who had known Luis since he was a boy. His church sat at the edge of the city, past the orange groves and worn brick walls. She arrived just before sunset, the golden light casting long shadows through the stained glass. He greeted her with silence, then concern. When she handed him the letter, he read it slowly, carefully, then looked up with a sigh. She wants everything, he said. Not just the shop. The land, too. Carmen nodded. It was never about the business. It's about what Luis left behind. The priest unlocked a drawer in his office and pulled out a folded document. Before Luis died, he came to me, asked for a safe place to keep this. It was a deed, the official land registry, notarized and clean. But the name on it wasn't Isabella's. It was Carmen's. Carmen stared at the paper. Her name. Her right. It's not just memory, Father. It's proof. He nodded. But be careful. Isabella is clever. She won't stop because of paper. As Carmen walked home, under the darkening sky, her steps grew firmer. The boundaries had been redrawn. And this time she would fight. That night, Carmen pulled out old photo albums, letters, and family documents. Memories poured out between yellowed pages. Luis's first day of school. Their first shelves of beans and salt. Her late husband's passport photo, crumpled at the edge. Then she found something unexpected. A business partnership agreement. Signed by Luis and herself. Dated 15 years ago. It was a legal bond. Proof that Carmen was not just a mother helping her son. She was a co-owner. She took a deep breath. Then made copies of everything. The letter, the deed, the agreement, and hid them in a tin box beneath her bed. Just in case. The next morning, she returned to the shop. Not to confront. Just to observe. She stood across the street, behind the bakery awning, and watched Isabella talking to a man in a black car. Not a supplier. Not a customer. Arturo. She took photos with a small phone Luis had bought her. Then turned and walked home. When she got back, someone had broken into her house. Drawers open. Papers scattered. The box under the bed missing. She sank to her knees. But she didn't cry. She reached behind the old bookshelf, where she had placed a second copy the night before. Some echoes cannot be silenced. 2 days later, Carmen received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was deep, gentle. Dona Carmen. My name is Andres. I was a friend of Luis. From Oaxaca. She paused. I never heard of you. He didn't talk about me much. We worked together on something he couldn't speak of. He wanted to change the way small businesses were treated. Wanted justice for the families like yours. And what does that have to do with now? She asked. He sighed. I was with him the week before he died. He gave me a copy of a contract. Just in case. He said if anything happened, I'd know who to call. Carmen's heart pounded. Do you still have it? Yes. And more. We should meet. They arranged to meet at a cafe by the railway station. Andres arrived dressed simply. Sharp eyes. Quiet presence. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were scanned documents, messages between Isabella and Arturo, and a bank transfer made days before Luis's accident. Carmen stared at the date. She paid him before he died. Andres nodded. She wanted full control. The accident wasn't random. Carmen gripped the edge of the table. Now it wasn't just about business. It was murder. Carmen returned to the priest first, then the lawyer Luis once used, then to Andres again. Slowly, piece by piece, they formed a case, not only for fraud, but intent. She handed over copies to a trusted notary, filed an official complaint. But she didn't stop there. She contacted the community, the people who knew Luis, who respected her. She told them everything about the shop, the land, the lies, and the silence cracked. People stopped going to the shop. Vendors refused to deliver. Neighbors stood with Carmen in front of the building with candles and photos of Luis. The store light stayed off for 3 days. On the 4th day, Isabella arrived, dressed in black. She walked through the crowd, silent, her face pale. Inside, Carmen waited. "You knew," Carmen said, standing beside Luis's photo. Isabella didn't deny it. "He was going to leave everything to you. And I had nothing. You had him." Isabella looked away. "Not enough." Carmen stepped forward. "Now you have nothing again." And Isabella broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, like glass under snow. The trial was quiet, efficient. The evidence was clear. Fraud, tampering, suspicious death under investigation. Arturo disappeared before he could testify. Rumor had it he fled to Guatemala. Isabella was sentenced for financial crimes. The murder charges remained open. But Carmen didn't need the court to tell her what she already knew. She returned to the shop, cleaned the dust, restored the signs, brought back the candies for the children. The shop reopened a month later under a new name, Luis y Madre. She didn't change the paint. She didn't change the walls. She just brought back the soul. The jacaranda tree bloomed brighter that spring. And every morning, as she swept the steps, Carmen would smile. Not because she had won, but because she had remembered who she was. A mother, a fighter, and the last one standing.